Now that we have WordPress installed, it's time to get started actually creating content. Before we actually do this, we will need to configure some basic settings to ensure that our website functions correctly and reflects our brand. In this video, I'll explain why WordPress settings are so important. I'll cover how they control your website's functionality, user experience, SEO, and branding. And I'll also show you how to access and configure these settings in your WordPress dashboard. Let's get started. We'll begin by going to the dashboard and going to the settings area. Underneath settings, you have several subcategories. Let's start off by visiting General. The first thing that we can do here is control our site title. This is the main name of the website that will appear in the browser tabs and titles. The site title is originally inherited from the name that you assign to your site when you install WordPress. Because I used a name of example 2, which is not very descriptive, I'm going to change this. I'll be using a fictional website called Terra Diem as an example in this course. It's a good idea to make sure that you keep your website title concise, relevant, and memorable. Next up is the tagline. This should be a short, catchy phrase that describes your website's purpose or unique selling proposition. You'll want to make it informative and engaging. The next option we have is to assign a site icon. This allows you to customize the favicon, which is this little icon that shows up within the tabs or when you bookmark the website. We'll be adding a favicon a little bit later on in our project, so I'll leave this blank for now. The website address URL is the URL of your WordPress installation. The site address is the URL that visitors will use to access your website. Typically, these names are the same, but they can be different in some advanced configurations. It is worth mentioning that once you set these up, you're not going to want to change them. If you do, you could potentially break your website. The primary email address is the email that's associated with your website. WordPress uses this for administrative notifications. Membership controls whether your website is public or requires users to register. You can also specify the default role for those users who register on your site. I won't be using these features now, so I'm going to leave them at the original settings. The site language is going to set the primary language for your website. The time zone is where you can set your local time zone for accurate date and time display. I'm going to alter this and I will change it to a city that is closest to where I'm located. For me, that's going to be Los Angeles. Then you can go ahead and specify how you like the date formatted. I'm going to leave this at the default setting and also the time formatting that you prefer. If you make any changes to any of these areas, you'll need to click Save Changes to ensure that all of the changes are saved. The next option we're going to look at is the writing option. This is where you can select the default category for new posts. By default, this is set to uncategorized. Because we have not set any categories, this is currently the only option. I am going to update this a little bit later on, so at this point I'll leave it at uncategorized, but I feel like this is an important option for you to modify once you've created your categories. You can also set your default post formats. We'll just keep this at standard, and then we're not going to make any other changes here. The reading area is where you can specify how your posts are going to display on your website. Your home page can display a list of your latest posts or a static page. If you choose static page, you'll have to have a page that you can assign it to. Because we have not yet created any pages, we'll leave this at the defaults, but we will be revisiting this area of settings in a little while. In addition, you can specify the default number of blog posts to show per page and how the syndication feeds will show your posts. Again, we are not going to make any changes at this point, but this is an important area that you want to modify as needed. The discussion area allows you to configure comment settings and control whether comments are allowed and how you want users to be able to interact. At this point, I'm not going to make any changes, so we'll move on to the media area. The media area is where you can control how WordPress uploads images and other files. What you can do here is you can set the default thumbnail width and height, the medium size, max width and max height, and the same specifications for large size. Once again, I'll leave these at the default settings, but this is an area that you might need to modify based on the needs of your website project. The last section that we're going to be looking at is the Permalinks setting. This is where you can control how WordPress is going to display the names of your posts in the URL section of the browser. This is very important for SEO, so I highly recommend that you change this to post name. My WordPress install is currently using the post name setting, but this setting is not always the default. So make sure you come here and change this before you start creating any content on your website. The WordPress settings control how your website functions and appears to visitors. They can impact your website's SEO and branding. By carefully configuring these settings, you can create a website that is not only user-friendly, but also effective.